gacchāmi dhammam saranam gacchāmi sangham saranam gacchāmi.
The two opposites are endless. If you stop one, and then the one will arise. If you stop making peace, then war will arise. Therefore, we have to continue.
សម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទបានប្រសូតនៅថ្ងៃទី23ខែឧសភាពុទ្ធសករាជ2456ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1913នៅស្រុកដូនកែវខេត្តតាកែវព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាក្នុងសម័យប្រទេសខ្មែរយើងត្រូវបានអាណានិគមបារាំងត្រួតត្រាអស់រយៈពេលជិត100ឆ្នាំសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទទ្រង់បានយាងចូលព្រះទីវង្គតឬទទួលព្រះអនិច្ចធម៌នៅថ្ងៃច័ន្ទ900ខែផលគុណឆ្នាំចអត្តស័កពុទ្ធសករាជ2550ត្រូវនឹងថ្ងៃទី12ខែមីនាគ្រិស្តសករាជ2007នៅវេលាម៉ោង 8:15 នាទីព្រឹកនៅឯមន្ទីរពេទ្យ Cooley Dickinson ទីក្រុង Northampton រដ្ឋ Massachusetts សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកក្នុងព្រះជន្មាយុ94វស្សាដោយព្រះជរាពាធនិងព្រះរោគីពាធ
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2487ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1943សម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទចាប់ផ្ដើមកសាងព្រះភ្នោះជាព្រះសង្ឃខ្មែរ
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2500ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1956សម្ដេចបានយាងទៅចូលរួមក្នុងអង្គសន្និបាតអន្តរជាតិលើកទី6នៃក្រុមប្រឹក្សាព្រះសង្ឃស្ដីពីព្រះពុទ្ធសាសនាពាក់កណ្ដាលព្រះពុទ្ធសាសនា2500នៅវត្តកបៈអាយេរដ្ឋធានីរ៉េងហ្គូនប្រទេសភូមាក្នុងឋានៈជាសមាជិកគណៈប្រតិភូដឹកនាំដោយសម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាចូលទញ្ញាណោជួនណាត
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2501ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1957សម្ដេចទទួលសញ្ញាបត្របណ្ឌិតពីសាកលវិទ្យាល័យនីលន្ទាជាព្រះនាមមហាឃោសនន្ទនៅរដ្ឋប៊ីហាប្រទេសឥណ្ឌា
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2501ទៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2509ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1957ទៅ1965ពុទ្ធិកសិក្សាជាមួយព្រះគ្រូឧបជាមានព្រះនាមជាអាចនីឈីដាត់ស៊ូហ្វូជីអ៊ីជនជាតិជប៉ុនជាព្រះស្ថាបនិកនិកាយនិផនសានមីយ៉ូហូជីដែលមានគោលការណ៍សន្តិភាពពិភពលោកនិងសម្ដេចព្រះមហាសូមេធាធិបតីសម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជចូលទញ្ញាណោជួនណាតថ្នាក់ទី1គណៈមហានិកាយជាព្រះសង្ឃរាជនៃកម្ពុជា
ព្រោះសំខាន់ណាស់ព្រះលោក
Trees are very important. Like in the life of the Buddha was born under a tree, he found enlightenment under a tree, and he passed away under a tree. Our houses are built of timber, and trees provide us with fruit. We owe a lot to trees and to nature in general. Nature is very important. To have peace with our neighbors, we have to respect each other. Geographically, we live side by side. We cannot move away from our neighbors. And after all, human beings are brothers and sisters. We may be born as a Vietnamese or as a Thai or as a Cambodian. Therefore, there is a proverb.
The world is our house for all human beings are our brother and sister. to love them, to help them, to serve them are our duty in our religion.
This is contained within the 10 supreme virtues of Buddhism. All human beings are our mother. Sometimes we take birth as a man, sometimes as a woman. The Buddha once took birth as a woman, and he made a vow to be enlightened as a Buddha. You have to experience the suffering yourself, and also to see others suffer. Then you can feel compassionate towards yourself. Like the Buddha, he experienced suffering himself, and he saw others suffer. He saw the suffering of birth, aging, and death. And then he felt compassion towards his son, his wife, his mother, and father, and all sentient beings throughout the world. One of our great kings always had compassion towards his subjects. He said the suffering of his subjects affected him more than his own suffering, because, quote, the suffering of the people is the suffering of the king. King Yayavarman VII, who constructed Angkor Thom, had such a feeling towards his people. The 4 faces of Angkor Thom represent loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. If we abide by these boundless qualities, then the war will end and happiness will follow.
Saranam gacchami Dhammam saranam gacchami Sangham saranam gacchami
The 2 opposites are endless. If you stop one, and then the one will arise. If you stop making peace, then war will arise. Therefore, we have to continue.
សម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទបានប្រសូតនៅថ្ងៃទី23ខែឧសភាពុទ្ធសករាជ2456ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1913នៅស្រុកដូនកែវខេត្តតាកែវព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាក្នុងសម័យប្រទេសខ្មែរយើងត្រូវបានអាណានិគមបារាំងត្រួតត្រាអស់រយៈពេលជិត100ឆ្នាំសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទទ្រង់បានយាងចូលព្រះទីវង្គតឬទទួលព្រះអនិច្ចធម៌នៅថ្ងៃច័ន្ទ900ខែផលគុណឆ្នាំចអត្តស័កពុទ្ធសករាជ2550ត្រូវនឹងថ្ងៃទី12ខែមីនាគ្រិស្តសករាជ2007នៅវេលាម៉ោង 8:15 នាទីព្រឹកនៅឯមន្ទីរពេទ្យ Cooley Dickinson ទីក្រុង Northampton រដ្ឋ Massachusetts សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកក្នុងព្រះជន្មាយុ94វស្សាដោយព្រះជរាពាធនិងព្រះរោគីពាធ
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2487ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1943សម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទចាប់ផ្ដើមកសាងព្រះភ្នោះជាព្រះសង្ឃខ្មែរ
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2500ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1956សម្ដេចបានយាងទៅចូលរួមក្នុងអង្គសន្និបាតអន្តរជាតិលើកទី6នៃក្រុមប្រឹក្សាព្រះសង្ឃស្ដីពីព្រះពុទ្ធសាសនាពាក់កណ្ដាលព្រះពុទ្ធសាសនា2500នៅវត្តកបៈអាយេរដ្ឋធានីរ៉េងហ្គូនប្រទេសភូមាក្នុងឋានៈជាសមាជិកគណៈប្រតិភូដឹកនាំដោយសម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាចូលទញ្ញាណោជួនណាត
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2501ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1957សម្ដេចទទួលសញ្ញាបត្របណ្ឌិត ពីសាកលវិទ្យាល័យនីលន្ទាជាព្រះនាមមហាឃោសនន្ទនៅរដ្ឋប៊ីហាប្រទេសឥណ្ឌា
នៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2501ទៅពុទ្ធសករាជ2509ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1957ទៅ1965ពុទ្ធិកសិក្សាជាមួយព្រះគ្រូឧបជាមានព្រះនាមជាអាចនីឈីដាត់ស៊ូហ្វូជីអ៊ីជនជាតិជប៉ុនជាព្រះស្ថាបនិកនិកាយនិផនសានមីយ៉ូហូជីដែលមានគោលការណ៍សន្តិភាពពិភពលោកនិងសម្ដេចព្រះមហាសូមេធាធិបតីសម្ដេចព្រះសង្ឃរាជជោទញ្ញាណោជួនណាតថ្នាក់ទី1គណៈមហានិកាយជាព្រះសង្ឃរាជនៃកម្ពុជា
Trees are very important. Like in the life of the Buddha was born under a tree, he found enlightenment under a tree, and he passed away under a tree. Our houses are built of timber, and trees provide us with fruit. We owe a lot to trees and to nature in general. Nature is very important. To have peace with our neighbors, we have to respect each other. Geographically, we live side by side. We cannot move away from our neighbors. And after all, human beings are brothers and sisters. We may be born as a Vietnamese or as a Thai or as a Cambodian. Therefore, there is a proverb.
The world is our house for all human beings are our brother and sister. To love them, to help them, to serve them are our duty in our religion.
This is contained within the 10 supreme virtues of Buddhism. All human beings are our mother. Sometimes we take birth as a man, sometimes as a woman. The Buddha once took birth as a woman, and he made a vow to be enlightened as a Buddha. You have to experience the suffering yourself, and also to see others suffer. Then you can feel compassionate towards yourself. Like the Buddha, he experienced suffering himself, and he saw others suffer. He saw the suffering of birth, aging, and death. And then he felt compassion towards his son, his wife, his mother, and father, and all sentient beings throughout the world. One of our great kings always had compassion towards his subjects. He said the suffering of his subjects affected him more than his own suffering, because, quote, the suffering of the people is the suffering of the king. King Yayavarman VII, who constructed Angkor Thom, had such a feeling towards his people. The 4 faces of Angkor Thom represent loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. If we abide by these boundless qualities, then the war will end and happiness will follow.
Saranam gacchami Dhammam saranam gacchami Sangham saranam gacchami
The 2 opposites are endless. If you stop one, and then the one will arise. If you stop making peace, then war will arise. Therefore, we have to continue.
Đạiព្រះសង្ឃរាជសម្ដេចព្រះមហាឃោសនន្ទ បានប្រសូតនៅថ្ងៃទី23ខែឧសភាពុទ្ធសករាជ2456ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ1913នៅស្រុកដូនកែវខេត្តតាកែវព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាក្នុងសម័យប្រទេសខ្មែរយើងត្រូវបានអាណានិគមបារាំង
First of all, let me pay homage to the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Again, my deep respect to Venerable Mahāsangha and greeting all friends in Dhamma around the globe. I am Sukip Chok, live from Phnom Penh, together with Ponte Soktivi, who live from Seattle of the United States. Today, moderator for the Dhamma discussion. Welcome to the Dhammika Live Dhamma Sandana program. Before we begin our discussion, I would like to inform that this program brought to you by the Dhammika Live Foundation, led by Ponte Soktivi, who currently reside at Wat Kemra Pothiram, Seattle of the United States of America. This program is usually hosted in both language, Khmer and English. So yesterday we host the same topic but in Khmer, and tonight we have a great privilege to live the show again and on special occasion with brought to you with our topic today, and I would like to also I will brief later on, but again our program lie in both Khmer and English, and the language shift interchangeably every Friday, but this time it's special, so we host on Saturday and Saturday. For Cambodian time, it's live at 8:30, and for Seattle time, it is at 6:30 a.m. So in fact, it's good morning to a friend in Seattle or in United States, but good evening for Cambodian people. So our main purpose is to disseminate the Buddha teaching, which is applicable in the daily life of all people around the world. And today, we are very pleased to present to you a very interesting topic and important topic somehow entitled Mahāghosananda, his life and legacy. Many of us may already know Mahāghosananda, and today is a very special occasion because it is the birthday of the Mahāghosananda. That's why Dhammika Live Foundation raised this topic to pay our gratitude to the great legacy that Mahāghosananda have left with everyone on the earth. So we have invited Dhamma speaker who will share this experience, but also how important that Mahāghosananda legacy have left behind. So before further ado, I would like to invite Ponte Soktivi to kindly introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jaspip. I would like to pay homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And again, let me pay my great respect to Most Honorable Dr. Johnson Yet Mahāghosananda, who is also one of the special speakers for today's discussion. And again, Venerable Panya Watano Wisawajia from Battambang, Kingdom of Cambodia, and Sister Sej Sarom, also from Battambang, Cambodia. And last but not least, Sister Jenny Chim from Seattle, Washington State, USA. Just to inform that the three speakers here, Most Honorable Dr. Johnson Yet, he is the Vice Director of the President Raja Buddhist University, Phnom Penh, and also Venerable has had participated in the Dhamma Yatra and also had worked closely with Mahāghosananda. So today we will learn a great deal from his experience working with Brahma directly. And also Most Honorable Wisawajia, he also one of the assistant in Maha's work, like right now what he's been doing in Battambang province along with other colleagues. and Sister Seisarom as well, who has been one of the Thammayatra volunteers for over 20 years. So she's gonna share a lot of experience with us, what she has gone through and the life and legacy left by Mahāghosananda. And also Jenny Chims, she's the first generation of Cambodian American who was born and raised in Seattle, and she's the person who get inspired from Maha's work and contribution to the Cambodian community. So thank you very much for speakers who have joined with us today. As today is the special occasion that we commemorate the birthday of Samdech Mahāghosananda. Actually, normally people may commemorate the death anniversary when a person dies, but for me, I feel like it is a special honor when we can commemorate a person on their birthday, because we would like to recognize their existence into this world, like a person like Mahāghosananda, who have been existed on this earth, is such a blessing to many, not just only for Cambodian community, but it is a blessing for the world to have a kind of joyful person to exist in this world. So thank you very much. Again, we would like to move on to the question that we're going to discuss. The title today, Mahāghosananda, His Life and Legacy. Before we move on to study about what kind of legacy that he left and what should we do to continue to preserve his legacy, I would like to ask the first question to all audience, just kind of, give a little bit description how you understand about his life, and how would you name his special ability or special characteristic, as you may have noticed. So let me start from most honorable Dr. Mahāghosananda Johnson. Can you share a little bit description of who is Mahāghosananda?
My deep respect to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and to all venerable speakers and the speakers who are present in this virtual room. In short, I would share what my perspective on Mahāghosananda existence. Mahāghosananda is a person who can be called a silent breaker, who tried to break all the silence, especially in the early 90s when many people were not safe to walk on the road, but instead of staying inside the comfort temple or comfort zone, he led a peace march on the road across the country. So I would like to call him a silent breaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Short but very meaningful silent breaker, as we notice. And a lot of people also say the same thing in referring to his, personality, that he's very quiet, very calm, also very shining at the same time. And instead of staying comfortably at the temple, he chose to walk to organize the peace march, which is not an easy work, to call upon a lot of people, thousands of people to walk 400 kilometers for the cause of peace. Thank you for sharing with that. And let me move to Venerable Panya Watano. Visovichia, please share your idea.
First, I would like to pay my homage to the Triple Gem, to the most venerable Dr. and Venerable Saktivi, and all sisters, and all the devotees around the globe. And today I'm very pleased to be invited to join this program again in English version. For me, Mahāghosananda, he is a Cambodian man who sacrificed his whole life for the benefit of all beings. Not for Cambodian, but for all beings. And he is very humble and always smile, silence. He is a role model for all Cambodian monks, I think. And he is one who used to be nominated Nobel Peace Prize winner for 4 times. And one of remarkable, his name is Mahāghosananda, means the voice of joy. So it means that when the people have met him, he always make people joyful and happy, relaxed with his presence with him. And one of the things that I do like him, he's the one who always encourage me to work actively and creatively in society for bringing all people to be to have peace and harmony in the societies. That's all.
Thank you so much. I like the way you kind of translate the Pali term from his name by Mahāghosananda. What it really means is the voice of the joy. As most honorable doctor said, he really speak, but if he utter any word that would be joyful, that would bring joy to the listeners. So this is really a great lesson. He doesn't talk much, but when he do talks, it will give benefit and joy to the people. Thank you so much for sharing. And Sister Seisarom, you have anything to add to that?
គណៈក្រាបថ្វាយគុំគុណព្រះអង្គគឺរៀងរៀងតាមបាត់ដំបង Mahāghosananda to me, he was very, very quiet, spoken monk, smile a lot, and listen attentively to what people have spoken to him. And he's always chosen his words with care. So I heard some people say that he could speak like speaking languages. But to us, I think the language that he spoke most beautifully was the language of the heart, and the language of love, the language of compassion, and the language of nonviolence.
That is great, the language of nonviolence. Thank you so much. And Sister Jenny, what have you learned about his personality?
Sure. First, I'd like to also pay my respect to the Triple Gem, the Dhamma, or the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and greetings to all venerables and the sisters that are joining us today as well in this discussion, and greetings to all the viewers today. What I've learned about Mahāghosananda is that he's a very courageous and brave and compassionate being. I like to think of the story of the Buddha, not the story, but like how people have described him, where just being in his presence kind of you begin to let your guards down, and you become in a more peaceful state just by being in his presence. And it just sounds to me that that's what Mahāghosananda was to Khmer people. I read that Buddhism was almost wiped out, and monks were also killed in the masses, and so for people to see him walking into the refugee camps played a great role in the restoration of the Dhamma. And I know that was his goal as well, was to reignite the teachings of the Dhamma to people and let people know that it's not dead yet. We're still the Dhamma is still existing, and it can still help us. And just like the previous speaker says, like, he was all about peace, all about nonviolence, and all about being joyful and being present in the moment. That was, I think, from my readings of him, he really preaches about being in the present moment, which is very hard to do, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's very hard to do, to stay focused on the present. Yet we still live in the present, so we hope that we will try our best to follow his advice. Thank you for sharing, Venerable Mahāghosananda. In short, he's the symbol of peace. He's the symbol of peacemaker, and he's the person who conduct peace, practice the peace, and live for peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pante and sister who share very short but very precise about the characteristic of Mahāghosananda. I take some keyword with a smile, the voice of joy, language of non-violation, and peace is very great. And as a peace study student, myself, I'm really inspired by his work a lot. So thank you so much for this enlightenment. I would like to also ask Dr. Pante Yongsen-Yit, if you can share us what were his work. I mean, the Mahāghosananda work that make and also contribute to the society and the whole world, that make people remember of his name, but also his legacy. Please, Pante.
I have never heard anything from him with regard to the his work, especially the conflicts, the difficulty, the tragedies of what's happening in Cambodia, either in Cambodia or in the world, but especially during his work from 1978 up to 2000. One thing that everybody feel is, in Cambodia during the 90s, let's start with the from 1990 conflicting peace, signed the peace accord in Paris, which is known as Paris Peace Accord, and we had four factions, meaning that Cambodia was divided into four parts, and everybody was very happy, joyful to have peace agreements, or some people call it ceasefire. And I still remember on that day, after they signed the peace accord in Paris, and in my temple they had the banner, a congratulatory banner saying that war in Cambodia is ended. Then at that time I walked across that banner, and I went to see my grandmother, who was a Buddhist nun, practiced meditation at the temple, and then I went to see her, and the first sentence that she said to me is, "My son, the war in Cambodia is ended." I remember that sentence. She told me the war in Cambodia is ended. That means, I think, we signed peace accord in October 23rd. So I think 24th, my grandfather told me that the war was ended. But even though the war was ended, but the war in the heart, the anger, the revenge, and the traumatization is so deep inside the Cambodian hearts those days. And Mahāghosananda start to feel that there must be something have to be done in order to heal this the wounded hearts of the Cambodian people, because we all know that each and every family had lost their members, and each and every family also, most of the Cambodian family, those they feel they make some sort of mistake from their own political perspective. Because I used to meet a former Khmer soldier telling me that the reason that he was fighting with the other Khmer faction is not clearly known what is going on. He just pick up the guns and follow the groups. So I think this is one of the examples that happening in Cambodian conflicts. And so after the peace accord in 1991, many people feel that they make some mistake to their own nations, their country. So they had been very badly traumatized by the war. So Mahāghosananda used the peace march in order to heal it. The reason that Maha decided to heal the Cambodian hearts by leading a peace march because at that time there was not any single NGO or body or party who think about that healing process of the war post-traumatization. That's why Mahāghosananda led the peace march, because we had four groups and everybody was very busy with their own political struggling. I maybe use this word, and none of those four factions thought about how the mind of Cambodian people had been deeply wounded. So Mahāghosananda was was the only person who think deeply how to heal the people by using the Buddha's teachings. So this is the starting point of his work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ponte, for recalling, like the history, important history back in the 90s. And indeed, you highlighted, the starting point with the Paris Peace Agreement. And this year somehow is the 30th anniversary of the Paris Peace Agreement as well. But you see the lie of, we accuse the negative peace, which is the absence of war, but the heart is not yet healed. So the peace might have been a healing process that Mahāghosananda have contributed. So thank you so much for sharing this background. I feel like I walk back during the period as well. Although I'm just so young at the time, but what you have shared is very interesting. Thank you so much, Ponte. And I would like to also turn to Ponte Sokvichir. So if you have anything to add, like what were Mahāghosananda work and how did this work contribute to the society and the world? Please, Ponte.
Thank you very much. For my thought, Mahāghosananda, he has done many great jobs for the whole world, not for Cambodians. But when he started to work for Cambodians refugees at the Thai-Cambodian border in 1978 with other organizations as well as the UNs. At the time, he also started to reestablish Buddhism for Cambodian people living there. I think at the time, like many Cambodians, missed to see venerable monks for many years during the Khmer Rouge. And when they saw the monk at the first time, some Cambodian cries. So it means that Venerable Mahāghosananda, he brings the hope, he brings the courage, he bring the love to all Cambodian at the Cambodian Thai border at that time. I think this is one of the symbolic of peace, love that he have provided to all Cambodians. And during the peace march, I think at the time I'm still young, but I also see a few monks, especially old monks in my community. Actually, I live in Battambang. I see venerable monks walking, and nuns, and many lay people walk. And when people met their family, some people they cry, and then they see each other with tears and express a lot of trauma, and they talk about something in the past. So it's look like the Dhamma Yatra, the Dhamma Yatra pins bring like a reconciliation. Like people see each other, like they feel reconciled, love each other because they didn't see each other for a long time. This is the way that the peace march led by Samdhat Mahāghosananda, like he bring peace and love to all Cambodian people. When they see each other, like they feel, they cry that right now the war ended, and one of the things that it's very powerful and remarkable that he bring the Buddha words, hatred can never cease by hatred. Hatred can only cease by love. And this is, he always said to all people who join the march. And for Maha, he always values all the work along the way, especially when he see the deminers. He regard them as a bodhisattva who saved many lives of Cambodians. So it's a lot of teaching that Maha give to all participants, especially encourage all people who join the march to focus on the Buddha teaching, especially the 5 precepts. He said that if we don't remember all the 5 precepts, just stop killing, like it means that we are doing peace, or we're building peace. We are making peace for our nations, for ourselves. That's all.
Thank you so much, Pandey. That is very interesting when you share about his work, what he has been doing. Is the great jobs that contribute to not only Cambodian society but also to the world. And as we have been aware that he has, there were several times that he had to meet the high-ranking officers and political leaders, peacemakers of the world. You know, those like the Pope, second Dalai Lama, the Japanese monk role model who was inspired him a lot with the study of peace, and a lot of other peacemakers also in Southeast Asia, like Aung San Suu Kyi as well, when he went with some like Sangre Junat to attend the World Buddhist Summit in Burma in the 1954 or 55, I believe. Anyway, let me focus on the Dhamma Yatra, as you were mentioning about the Dhamma Yatra or the Peace Walk. So I would like to ask Sister Sejsarom to share a little bit about the purpose of Dhamma Yatra, its actions, and what is the goal of the Dhamma Yatra. Can you explain the meaning?
Thank you. What I found interesting about Maha, he got involved with Dhamma Yatra, or when he first met the refugees in the 1978 at the Gao province in Thailand. And, he's a little bit old when he get involved in this activity. Normally, we, jumped into work because of, living and quite young. But for Maha, he a little bit old. That's why he was so, mentally and spiritually strong. And he was, studied in India for many years, and while Cambodia was at war, he was studying meditation for almost 10 years in southern part of Thailand. And so he's already armed himself, equipped himself with a vast majority of very huge knowledge, both physically and mentally and spiritually. So when the teachers, meditation teachers in Thailand have told him that, okay, towards, now we have a first wave of refugees coming along the Thai-Cambodian border, and probably you're ready to come and meet them. And I think at that moment that probably has changed his life. That there's, like you said, there's nothing you can do, just go to the temple of human suffering and go and help them. And when he first met, like Bhante have mentioned, that he have brought the old pamphlet of the Buddha teachings about, in Khmer, we know it really well. Fear Mandai Rumwap the Gachong fear. Hatred can never be used by hatred. So he brought this, a pamphlet, and his peaceful present to meet with starving, very traumatized refugees who have fled the country. And, they haven't seen the monks in Europe for almost 4 years during the Khmer. So they just start crying and weeping, all over the camps. And then it started to build the temples in the refugee camps, and also, during that time, there's a lot of refugees who were sponsored to live in the third world countries, and we continued to build the temples in, Europe, America, so Australia, and it was the beginning of his first step to get really involved in working for peace in Cambodia, and also working as a consultant for the UN and helping, found quite a number of organizations. So yes, I think back to the Dhamma Yatra because before, after Paris Peace Accord in 91, and I think the first Dhamma Yatra started in 1992, before Cambodia repatriated into the country in 1993. Bang Yet and me was born in the camp with the camp kid. So that was, fortunately, Bang Yet was still baby months and joined in the first Dhamma Yatra, and I was still really young and stay inside of the camp. And the idea of the Dhamma Yatra is just to, to bring Cambodia back to the country by walking, the process of walking and reconciliation. But I'm pretty sure Bang Yet will tell a beautiful story about what he experienced during the walk, because a lot of people, in the camp haven't met their, relatives for 3 years, because we've been living in the camp, I think, for 13 to 14 years. And so when coming back to the country, they met, their relatives that they thought would have been died or, disappeared. So this is there's a lot of crying and reunions along the route of the walk, starting from Aranya Pradesh in Thailand and it's in Phnom Penh. And the idea was just only begin, the only one walk, the first walk, and then finish. But in 1993, there's a UN impact sponsored, UN sponsored elections, and there's a lot of tensions, and there's a lot of, it's the war at war, even we signed a peace agreement, but the war ended, in later years on, and he had thought, oh, maybe we could help people to, get rid of the fears and going out to vote. So he used the Dhamma Yatra as one way that to bring hope and encourage, the people to go out and vote. And I think in the second Dhamma Yatra, there's also a cell bomb grenade that just landed in front of him, but it fortunately it exploded. And then it continues. First we thought it was only 1 year and then finished, but later on, we have continued. He was basically worked with the Dhamma Yatra for 7 times, I think, or 8. And after that, Bang Tracy won, continues until she unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And now with as a volunteer, those who really love the spirit of the walk and wanted to continue. And what is the theme of the essence of the walk? The walk, the Dhamma Yatra, I'm pretty sure Venerable will have another way to explain this Pali or Sanskrit rather than me. It's just the walk with the Dhamma, walk with the truth, walk with the non-violence, because before the walk, he is just amazing man. He's surrounded by all Cambodians and all, people from different countries. And he's the symbolic leaders of the walk, but there's a lot of people, work behind the scene, especially those who have experience in nonviolence and have trained, the walkers, to practice the Dhamma, to train on how to communicate in a nonviolent way. So he's surrounded by these non-Khmer as well as Khmer organizers. And then they decided to have, I think that the walk was first sponsored by the organization named CPR. CPR. I always remember the school. A bit nervous, I forgot. I forgot. I'll come back to that.
Is that Cambodian for Peace Reconciliation? Something like that.
Coalition for Peace and Reconciliation. Coalition for Peace and Reconciliation. And then we have a center called the Dhammayatra Center for Peace and Nonviolence, and we work with a lot of other NGOs, to bring, peace and reconciliation to Cambodia. Later on in the Dhammayatra, you will see that the theme will focus on landmines. I work a lot on landmines because we know that in this region it's heavily bombed by the U.S. and the parties superpower countries. And landmines, which is believed to be planted under the lands of Cambodia, I think more than the feet that we can so many millions landmines, not just only in Cambodia, but during the Vietnam War, it's also in part of Vietnam and Laos as well. So a lot focus on landmines and also on reforestation. Since the beginning, Maha was very fond of planting trees and ordering trees. So everyone since the beginning, Antabong people has always planted trees along the routes and later on focus on the 5 precepts because it's very important that you have to know to learn. A Cambodian has to learn the 5 precepts. And also with like an interfaith, we also joined a very interfaith walk. I think in 1995. We started from it's the 50th anniversary or 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. That we start from the Auschwitz camp in Poland and finish war. I don't remember how many countries, but war until finished at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where the war ended. So there's a lot of work is done during the Dhammayatra. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And as I also read through some of his books, also I saw the banner, the sign that they've been using during the Dhammayatra. Overall, around 8 times Dhammayatra that Samdai has led. And the last 2, I think it was very short walk, like from Kandahar province to Phnom Penh and Takeo province to Royal Palace of Cambodia in Phnom Penh. And because of his failing age, he could not walk physically well, but I think his mind and spirit was there with the people. And as I witnessed from the photo in the Peace March, sometimes the Dhammayatra focus on the non-violence, asking for forgiveness to end the war, to ceasefire, and also sometimes focus on the protection of environment, illegal logging, deforestation. So it was a great work had ever done by Samdai Mahāghosananda. I would like to invite Honorable Doctor to prescribe. He has a lot of experience with the peace walk. Please share your experience about the Dhammayatra. Please unmute yourself. Microphone.
My first impression with Mahāghosananda was not his peace work, but his physical beauty. I was a baby monk, I think in 1992, early 92, very small monk, and I stayed with the high priest of the temple. And then Mahāghosananda came to my temple, and he take out a piece of paper, and then he start to read the meaning of the Dhammayatra, and he started to explain the purpose of the walk and all. I still believe I still remember that it recalled to me that at that time not many old monks, Cambodian monks, could speak English or foreign language. So he started to explain in 2 languages, Cambodian and English. And my impression was, who is this man? Old man, and speak very, I didn't know English, so I said, he spoke very beautiful English. I didn't know whether his English those days was excellent or what, I don't know, but I just believe that he speaks beautifully. And the other thing is, normally my teacher, my preceptor, the high priest of the temple, was the most senior monks in the temple. So all the monks respect him, bow down to him. But my teacher bowed down to Mahāghosananda and worship him deeply. And then it kind of, it shocked me. Say, who this man? Why my teacher worship him? Because I never seen my teacher worship anyone at all, or pay the respect to anyone at all, because he was the most senior monks in the temple. And then my teacher, I am kind of, attendance to the senior monks. So we, whenever there was a guest coming to see my teacher, and I was the person who served tea, and my teacher just, make a sign to me that bring him a tea. Then I prepare very good tea for Mahāghosananda, and I bow down to him, and I offer him a tea, and he smiled at me. When the beauty of Mahāghosananda is something which is very difficult to explain, but it is a sort of beauty which had been beautified by the calmness of the mind. Because when we watch him closely, we can see his, his skin and his body is so beautiful. I don't know how to describe, but I just noticed that this monk is beautiful, handsome, kind of that, yeah. And that was my first impression with Mahāghosananda, and without thinking anything at all, without any consideration or whatever it is, or I asked a permission from my teacher and joined him. Joined his peace march in 1992, and what I can see along the way from Poipet to Phnom Penh, we spent, I think, about a month. We sleep on the road, and we had I think we have to walk about 30 kilometers per day. Or sometimes it's go up and sometimes it's go down to 25 or 31 or like that. In some areas where we stop for overnight, sometimes we did not have enough food or water, and there was a moment, I think the first day that we started to walk out of Wat Palilai, which is located along the Thai-Cambodian border. I think now it's located in Poipet town or something like that. When we started our journey, and there was a fighting between the government. Actually, at the time, Cambodia is under the UN, UNTAC. So there was a fighting. The Khmer Rouge started to shell from somewhere else, I don't know, and I think it's around 6 a.m. So everybody was on the road, and when the Khmer Rouge started to shelling the village, and then we caught in the middle of that situation, and then the people along the road shouted at us, the Khmer Rouge is coming, and now they started to shell it. So please try to find the bunkers and try to take care of yourself and make sure that you try to find a safe place to hide, because the sound of the gunfires keep coming. But one thing that shocked me deeply was all the participants did not panic, and Maha walked very calmly to lead the peace march, even though the people start to run away, especially the villagers, the travelers, motor taxi driver, everybody on the road, and then everything started to stand still, but the walk kept going. And I believe that because of the presence of Mahāghosananda, keep all the walkers I think people may be fear or scared to be killed by the shelling, but because of the presence of Mahāghosananda, all the workers, all the participants just keep walking and follow him until the shelling stopped. I think it took about 10 minutes, and people keep coming. So why all the monks keep walking? Why you don't have why you did not try to find a safe place? So stop walking like that. But we did not stop. Maha also did not stop, and Maha did not look kind of like moving or looking somewhere in a strange way. He just keep walking and leading a peace march. And people, after the shelling stop, and then people come back again and say, "Oh my God, this is a mistake. You're gonna got killed if you keep doing like this. Keep going again and again without finding a place to hide because the fighting was going on," or something like that. So this is the experience that I witnessed on the first day of my walk. One thing is I see how the people react, normal people, and the other thing is I saw how Maha reacts to the dangers that we facing those days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pante, for this great sharing again. I'm so inspired and feel so much. It is very touching from what you have described. Especially, I could feel what you say. It's very difficult to describe how you feel about Mahāghosananda, like the way he looked was so calm, the calmness of the mind that you have described. This is something happened to me as well, like for example when I never know, for example, Ponte Punsai, but like when I saw him through some clip or hear his voice, I start to feel, wow, this Ponte is so calm. And what you have described about Mahāghosananda, it related to my feeling, when you see someone who is so calm, so respectful, and that recalled me a lot. Thank you, Ponte. And you also described the difference of reaction between Mahāghosananda and the peaceful walker compared to the villager. So it tells us a lot how meditation, how the calmness have healed people, have helped us to stay calm to like the different situations. So thank you so much, Pante, and also Sister Sarom earlier as well sharing greatly. I'm so inspired from what you have shared. Even yesterday, I followed the Khmer talk. What you have share us your experience. I'm so inspired, and like we were talking behind the scene when we invited you that, oh, Sister Sarom is so young. How can you the way you look is so young, and even when you describe your experience during the Dhamma Yatra, it's so inspiring. I'm not sure how old were you during that time, but I get a feeling you were knowing Mahāghosananda, who is the voice of joy. That's why it inspires you to stay joyful. So you keep so young. That is what inspired me a lot. Thank you, sister. And now I would like to hear from sister, probably first to sister Sarom, given your first experience during that time compared to many of us here. So I'm wonder what do you see Mahāghosananda legacy, and as a younger generation like us, what would we do to preserve his legacy? Please share us, sister. Can you hear us, Sister Sarom?
Yes. I'm sorry. I lost a little bit of concentration. What is Maha?
Can you hear
Maha? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I could hear you now.
What is his legacy? There's so many things to say about him, and when Venerable Satir invite me to talk, I said maybe one day is not enough because talked with Bangjit before. There's so many stories of Maha, and because he doesn't speak much, he didn't speak much. He's a very very stupid man, and what I found, very stunning and interesting is how can you lead people without saying much? This is one of the quality of good leadership. You have an art of public speaking to convey, to convince, take people in your side. But he just only got her smiling and peaceful presence, and that's it. And a lot of people from all faiths, all races, and follow him. So he might define what leadership is all about now. Maybe the way that we communicate is not just only words. Maybe it's something more than that, that we can feel connected and feel inspired. So I think the whole being, his way of life, the way he works, the way he represents, I think this is what, he brings the Dharma alive, or what some people call him a baby Buddha or Bodhisattva, because of he just lives it. He doesn't speak, he doesn't teach you, he doesn't tell you to do things, but he just lives it, tell it by being a great example. And I got to know him when I took the reading class. Some of you know Bob Martin is very, very inspired by Maha and changed his life by Maha, and he devoted his life to spread Maha words. I think Bong here Venerable to convince and get him to come to talk. It's a great story, one of the greatest storytellers of all time, and tell a lot of story about Mahāghosananda and about the Dhammayatra style because he's one of the organizers. And I learned from Bob because he taught English. Bangit was the first teacher with him, teaching about the life of peacemakers. Because during that time in 98, early mid 90s, when he got to Battambang and he asked these things, because even though the agreement signed in 91, but we still have war in 98, 97, 98. The Khmer was in Thailand, very near to Battambang. And the people didn't at that time believe that it's possible. And it's like, if you didn't believe it, it's not going to happen. So he set up, reading classes on lives of peacemakers around the world. We get to study about the movement, the civil rights movements of Martin Luther King, about the Gandhi Salt March, about the Dalai Lama struggling, with the Chinese government, the Aung San Suu Kyi, and apartheid in South, Africa. So he just brought these people and taught us that look at other countries. They can do it. They face the same problem, the same difficulties, but it at least in how someone or the group of people can stand up and do the right thing at the right time. And so after that, before going to study the lives of these peacemakers, you have to study your heroes. Before you study the other heroes, come get to know your heroes, your own heroes. So we've all learned a lot about Mahāghosananda, and we read the book, but there's unfortunately not many reading materials about him. So we got step by step, and like I showed yesterday, a lot of friends asking for this copy, and it's a special supplement of the Cambodia dailies. It's it dedicated this whole 20 pages on Mahāghosananda Dhammayatra, and he awarded the Nirvana Peace Prize. So we read a lot of what's inside, and what striking me the most, and he said that you have to love Khmer because they're the one who need love the most. So, Cambodia, not long ago, there was a hate day. The day we remember to hate the Khmer was a national holiday. So, and now this man from nowhere, no one know him, and tell us the message of love. And love those who kill our families. And I didn't buy it. I thought it's just overrated, people just pray him because it's the old monks and stuff like that. Took a long while to get that message to sink in. Like when you read about him and you heard about him, you didn't feel like he's someone special. But the moment you met him, he doesn't say much to you, but this is the one who's really special. I met Buddhist scholars when we went to the meeting, and when they were, where are you from? I'm from Cambodia. Oh, you have a great Buddhist background. Mahāghosananda. The smiling is so holy. And everywhere we go, we heard about people praising and saying a lot of good things about him. And, you read it. Some say he's the holiest man, the Buddha, the living Buddha. And yes, my first walk ever, I have the organizers on logistics, and that's the last walk of Maha physically, and in 2003. And I had a chance because Bob took me to meet him at the house of the Vietnamese ladies. I don't know who she is, but she married with an American husband. I guess he probably worked for the embassy or for the international organizations, and they live in a big, huge villa, very fancy house. And I got a chance because of Bob when to meet him, and it was a shock encounter. It was like he just do this when he see with the moment he saw us, his sister. And no, I never, experienced any more. I respect too late, young, really young people like me, and then because he suffered from dementia, and he forgot a lot of things. The only thing he remember is Bob Matt. When Bob asked, how do you remember me? He said, Bob, yes, Bob Matt. He kept saying it, Bob Matt. I was surprised because he didn't call Bob Christ. Because normally during the walk, he would call Bob Christ. And he tells the Tati, JC, the monks, you have to go and meet the Christ because that Christ can heal you. You touch them, you get healed. When people would go and Bob would feel really embarrassed. So I guess that his openness, open mind, it was really inspired. He got influenced a lot by the Zen Buddhism. He could encounter with a lot of interfaith people. And so that's what I learned from him. To be open and respect other space. And the moment at that house, to me, is like one of the most important moment in my life because I experienced in my art the living Buddha and the living Christ. Bob is a local hero here, and the camp hero, so everybody knows him and he spent all his life in Cambodia. So yes, his legacy, to be honest, just his presence, his whole being. He doesn't speak much, he doesn't teach you, he doesn't show you, but the way he lives his life, the way we bring the Dharma alive, and this is the most important legacy. And I think every time when we, bring the Dharma alive, you bring the Buddha alive, and you bring Maha alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sister. Very beautiful. And, the legacy of bringing the Dhamma alive and being openness is something that we all can learn and should continue to contribute. And, that's why one of the purpose of our Dhamma Sandana is to bring the Dhamma alive as well. So we follow the pathway of Mahāghosananda and the Buddha pathway. Thank you so much, sister. And I would like to hear from Sister Jenny. I know that you inspire a lot from Mahāghosananda. So can you share us from your perspective what is his great legacy and what would we learn to preserve from his legacy? Please, sister.
Sure. For me, Mahāghosananda represents the Dhamma, the Buddha Dhamma. Just like Sister Sarom said, he lived the Dhamma. He exudes it, and he lived it by example. And so you can't help but be curious about how does he stay calm? How is he so courageous? How is he so brave? And it's rooted in his training in the teachings of the Buddha. And so it sparks your curiosity about that. And his legacy is about nonviolence and about peace and compassion and forgiveness, which is something that's very difficult when you think about it, when you deeply reflect about it. When somebody hurts you, you can't help but have negative feeling towards another person. And what he teaches is that you actually, you yourself are not free from mistakes. You yourself have also made decisions out of your ignorance too. And so you are no different than that person that hurt you as well. And I remember getting to this place in my life where I recognized that I also have, because I have been hurt, I have treated other people badly because of the pain and the suffering that I had endured. But how do I get over it? And for some of us, when we recognize that, we feel extremely shameful. And it's hard to get over. And we either punish ourselves because of that shame and guilt, or we completely deny that we've done any wrong, and we continue to take it out on the rest of the world and the people around us. But Mahāghosananda was all about forgiveness and forgiving the people that hurt you, but first you got to forgive yourself. And I think that was one of the most kind of inspiring thing, because the Khmer Rouge soldiers, they know what they did. They knew that they committed atrocities as well. But how do you get over that? And Mahāghosananda showed them compassion. He showed them how to forgive themselves. And that is like the strongest legacy, because I think a lot of us need to learn how to forgive. And if we can learn how to forgive ourselves, we begin to forgive others. And we learn to forgive others who have directly affected us, but also the people who have indirectly affected us. Like, what I mean by indirectly is like, politicians and, people who have influenced our society. Some of the decisions that they've made, it harms us. It has made some of us, our lives harder. And it's very easy to be filled with hatred. And because when you hate somebody, you also begin to dehumanize them. And once you begin to dehumanize them, then you treat them like you think that they don't deserve to be treated with loving and kindness. But that's not what Mahāghosananda and the Buddha teaches. All beings, not just humans, but all beings are worthy of love and compassion. And when we talk about beings, one of the things that I love about his legacy was also that he was an environmentalist. He talked a lot about how important it is to take care of Mother Earth. And like you mentioned, he planted trees along the way of his walks too. And so he taught people how to respect our environment as well, because we're all interconnected. And when I learned about Mahāghosananda, I was in a tough period in my life. I was actually getting over the tough period of my life, and I wanted to learn how to move forward. And so I just figured, I've never killed anybody. I've never done wrong like that. But if somebody like a Khmer Rouge soldier could take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma and help them move forward with their life, I'm sure that it can benefit me as well. And that's, to me, is what his legacy is all about. And, here in America, we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And he was inspired by Gandhi. And he actually went to India and studied, I think, under like his school or something like that. So his Dr. Martin Luther King's philosophy of nonviolence came from Gandhi, came from India. And we all know India is greatly influenced by the Buddha Dhamma as well. And, we didn't always celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. As a matter of fact, when he was still alive and he was a civil rights leader, many people hated him. The system hated him. Our government did not like him because of what he stood for, which is equality for all. And because of that, at the beginning, when he passed away, at the beginning of that, his reputation was almost tarnished. And it wasn't until in the 1980s, his wife continued to fight for his legacy. His family still thought that we should do something to remember the legacy that he's had in America. And now we celebrate his birthday every year, and we honor his legacy in that way. And it took quite a long time, I mean, it was 1986 that the nation finally celebrated his legacy. And that was about almost 20 years after he passed away. And in the state of California, it was a bunch of high school students that actually fought to have his legacy honored in the state of California. A bunch of kids, who never, who obviously was not in his presence, probably wasn't alive when he was at the height of his career, but yet his story and his influence on society impacted them so much that they legislated, that they rallied, that they petitioned for the state to honor him. And so in 1981, because of these kids, these high school students, the state of California celebrated it. And then 5 years later, it was celebrated nationally. And so, so many of us are just learning about him. I only learned about Mahāghosananda about 5 years ago. And yeah, I do think, how can we preserve his legacy? What can I do? I'm not an organizer in the community in any way, but I think about my children, and I think about how I can plant the seed in my children's mind about who he was and what the Dhamma represents in my life, in the life of their Cambodian heritage. And I have talked to my child, who is now 11, about Mahāghosananda, because when we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King, I said, Cambodia kind of have our own version of Dr. Martin Luther King. Mahāghosananda fought for the equality. He fought for justice. It was all about nonviolence, and he organized a walk as well. And my son, he's still young, and so he's kind of like, oh, really? But, one of the things that we do as American students is we write, we often have an assignment in middle school or high school about writing about somebody who inspires us or people or somebody you want to learn about. And, I think that I will always encourage him to look into Mahāghosananda, to do a research about him, and hopefully get inspired through his story, and hopefully inspire his peers about learning, it's that even us Cambodian people, even we have somebody whose legacy is just as important and should be remembered, like Dr. Martin Luther King. Because once I learned about Mahāghosananda, I began to be filled with so much pride, because I would say that I was almost like a lost soul. I didn't know who I was. I'm Cambodian, but I was born in America, indoctrinated into the Western educational system and society. So I saw the world differently than many Cambodians. And what I did was I finally switched it. I finally started listening to the Dhamma, and I finally saw the world through the eyes of the Cambodian people. And I finally was able to connect, and I finally began to understand my parents, because my parents are Buddhist, and they lived it as well. And I gave this example yesterday in my talk, but I had a conversation with my father about anger, and I told him that this person is making me angry, and he says, well, that person must live miserably. Why, don't you feel sorry for them because they're so angry? And I go, feel sorry for them? They're mean and they're horrible to me. I was very young. I was only 12, 13 years old. But I was just like, why would I feel sorry for them? They're horrible to me. And I didn't understand what he meant until I studied the Dhamma, until I realized, oh, I see what my dad is talking about. You don't want to get sucked into other people's anger, because if they make you angry, then you become the angry person as well. And you got to learn how to cut those ties. And, since then, I've been working on how to develop myself peacefully. And part of that process is learning to forgive myself so that I can forgive others. Forgiveness also leads to compassion. So learning to have compassion for myself so that I can have compassion for others. And I've lived a less intense life. Now I'm kind of, life is suffering. So we all go through those ups and downs, but it's not as intense as it used to be. Because I feel like I've finally developed a different view, a different perspective. Because when I was younger, I had the wrong view of life, and that's probably why that led me to depression and things like that. But because of being so inspired by Mahāghosananda and saying, well, he's obviously learning all this stuff from the teachings of the Buddha, I might as well try to learn it too, because I want to be as brave as him. I want to be as courageous and loving as he is too. So how did he do it? And he did it through the teachings of the Buddha. And, I know that sometimes we want to change the world, but what he teaches is that it starts with us first. And then from us, it goes into our family, then our community, then the nation, and so forth, and eventually into the world. So before I get angry about the world and all the atrocities that I witness, I ask myself, well, what can I do? Well, I can exude loving kindness for myself and for my children. And, maybe it's not my fate to be somebody who solves the world's problem, but I am contributing to it. I'm contributing to helping because I'm creating another life that will be exuding loving kindness too through my children. And wherever they take it, that's their journey, So
Thank you so much, sister. That is a very inspiring sharing about your personal connection and how Mahāghosananda legacy have inspired or have transformed you, as well as to show you the way to find your identity between the Cambodian and the American. Thank you so much, sister. And you have point out, about the being peace, compassionate ourselves, and then that can spread to other as well. That is something that recall us about the great quote of Mahāghosananda that I would like to read to all of our Dhamma friends. Probably some of us have come across, but that is his famous quote that read that great compassion make a peaceful heart make a peaceful person make a peaceful community make a peaceful nation, and a peaceful nation make a peaceful world. So that is so beautiful. And now I would like to also turn to Ponte, because we hear a lot from lay people. So now let us hear from Ponte. As a probably as a younger monk generation, or your if we think of the monk community, what would Mahāghosananda legacy could inspire us, and could how would the younger monk would do to preserve the Mahāghosananda legacy? Please, Ponte Sovitia, please.
Thank you very much, the Most Venerable, and Sister Saram, Sister Jenny, for your great sharing to us about Mahāghosananda life and your personal reflections after you have read his story and life, his philosophy. It's so wonderful sharing to all listeners, I think. For me, I think Mahāghosananda, he left a lot of great legacy for us as a Cambodian young generations. And we are Cambodian young generation, son should continue his journey, his philosophy, life, especially keep doing good for the benefits of our brothers and sisters, and do whatever that we can to share his role model to Cambodian people and around the globe. Actually, I have working with have been working with many interfaith religious leaders that even though they have different faith, but they try to promote, they are talking about Maha life as a role model for religious harmony. Especially I mostly involved with Catholic priests. They talk a lot, even though they are invited to have a lecture at the overseas. They talk the role model that Maha built peace among religious practitioners. Like he's very open-minded for all religious leaders. He's non-discriminated any religions. He just only provide like encourage all religious followers to do goods. Not he didn't belong in any philosophy. He just only keep doing good for all beings. This is his really message to all of us. For me, I think as a young Cambodian that are working for society as well, in order to keep his teachings alive, like we have to produce young, to provide a proper educational to vulnerable monks. If we have the good educational system for vulnerable monks, his role model will be survived, especially the Buddha teaching that Mahāghosananda always alert us to bring the Dharma from the temple to the real experience of people. I just would like to quote his message to remind us we are Buddhists, must find the courage to leave our temples and enter the temples of human experience, the temples that are filled with suffering. If we listen to the Buddha, Christ, Gandhi, we can do nothing else. The refugee camp, the prisons, the fatal, the battlefield then become our temples. We have so much to do. This is what he just alert us as a Buddhist man. We have to work for the society. We have to keep the Buddha survive. At my Buddhist university, like maybe some of you know, we set a fund we call Mahāghosananda Fund. We name Mahāghosananda Compassion Fund, Mahāghosananda Wisdom Fund, Mahāghosananda Archive Fund, Mahāghosananda Dormitory Funds. That this fund we try to use is belong to Maha Legacy, because we got some donation from Mahāghosananda followers who love his mission, who love his activity, especially those who know Bob. They donate the money through Bob for keeping the legacy of Maha survive. And we have some fund for printing the books, especially Step by Step and the Battlefield, for free constitution to all people who come into our Buddhist university. And when I was invited to join international conference, I also bring some textbook about Maha life to contribute to all participants as well. This is a way that we try to keep Maha's philosophy alive for all Cambodian people.
Thank you so much, Conte. Very delighted to hear and what you have helped to preserve Mahāghosananda legacy alive. Thank you so much, Conte. And next, we would like to also hear from Conte Yong Sen Yet. If you can share us, as a concerning his legacy. So, as a monk community, what would the monks should do to preserve Mahāghosananda legacy, please, Ponte?
I think we can learn one. He has said so much about how we as Buddhist monks can help the world. Maybe it's not easy for us, but still it is doable. and as he used to respond to one old lady in Mobile when he was giving a Dhamma Desna, a sermon. And then Ye just stood up and said, no, I could not follow 5 precepts. It's too many. So then Maha said, okay, just one enough. Okay. That story was very famous and everybody was laughing and all. And one thing is, Maha is so simple. He emanates the law of the simplicities in life. So humble and we as Buddhist monks can practice his teachings, can follow his message by doing whatever possible that we can do as a Buddhist monk. Especially, I still want to repeat the message that Venerable Visuvichya just read out a few minutes ago. The problem is nowadays, we Buddhist monks don't like to get out of the temple. That is the truth. And we keep chanting and praying in the temple, but the real suffering is somewhere close to our temple's gates. And Maha always try to encourage monks to get out of the temple. And I'm not very much sure how much we are brave enough to get out of the temple and to get into the temples of the human sufferings. So the best things that we can do is we must see that the sufferings out of the temple gates is our own suffering. But in order to get out of the temple gates, there must be something have to be done in terms of education. If our monks cannot understand the value of the education, then to get out of the temple is nothing. It's useless. So this is, it is not one, there must be reasons, a combined reason from the Buddha's teaching and how we train our monks to see the suffering of the other people is our own suffering. I think this is very similar to the statement of the King Jayavaraman VII when he said the suffering of our people is my own, the suffering of my people is my own suffering. So in this statement he also said we must be able to get out of our temple and get into the temple of the human suffering. It's almost the same. It says similarities between these two great people, these two great persons. One is about 1,000 years back, and now a new one is just born and died. And they say a very similar message from their own understanding about the world, about the human life. So to keep his legacy alive, monk has to get out of the temple and get into the temple of the human suffering. And it is not an easy job, but that job can be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhante, for sharing a great message about the legacy and how we should preserve it as a younger generation, especially in the name of the Cambodian community. And I myself also ask myself, quite often, like, what can I do to at least not to preserve, but at least to promote our great scholar of the past, as we Cambodian right now, nowadays, not only lay people, but also monks, we often quote the message of peace from the foreign scholars, but actually we Cambodian have a lot of great scholars in the past, but we don't often recognize or be aware of our own great scholars. So for me, as a younger monk of Cambodian generation, I always thought about how can I promote our past great scholars to the world to let them know that their message were really great. So we should pay attention, be aware of how we can do it, at least to spread the message, to our small community, like Jenny was saying, at least to spread the message to her own child. And we were talking about that when Jenny came to my temple last time. We talking about the Mahāghosananda's message. Also, she was trying to explain to her son, and also, as she witnessed the photo of some night here in our temple, I also tried to make a new one. Before it was the very old painting, no color at all. And then as soon as I arrived at this temple 2 years ago, I realized the temple didn't really honor him enough to his reputation or his great work, because this temple where I am sitting right now is also one of his initiative thought. And he was the one who come here quite often as well. When yesterday I was talking with the abbot, and his name is Ai Chai. He was one of the attendant participant in the Dhamma Yatra, especially in the Dhamma Yatra. I think maybe the third one that led across the Battambang, and when the some monks and nuns were killed during that time. So he was in that incident, and he also was very dear and near to Mahāghosananda. That time he was still staying in Wat Tan. I mean, my abbot here. Yesterday I talked about our program to him, and we share a lot of ideas. He share a lot of his experience witnessing some Mahāghosananda, and some often visit this temple as well. So that's why just a kind of what I can do to relate to this idea that somehow I bring a very beautiful image of Samdach. Also, I use my handwriting to prescribe his great legacy, and at least to put the date where when he was born and when he passed away. So when people come, they witness the image and also the information about him. At least these little things we can do, to spread the information to our little community. And if every person continue to do that, it will be great, from one person to another. It will be a great alertness to our younger generation. Okay, let me move to the last question. Well, let me start from Sister Sage Sarom. If you could leave the last message for our audience, or to those who have never known Samdach Mahāghosananda before, what kind of teaching that you learn from him, and you think it would be a great message for others to learn as well?
Thank you. And I think I will go back to the core teachings of our religion. For Maha, he would see that we are all one. So there's no east, west, south, north. So we all one. And so how can you harm others when you see others one? We are. So I think this is what he's trying to teach. He was trying to teach because that our beautiful Cambodia, had gone through many years before Khmer. We have years and years of wars and violence and suffering. And I think I was saying to Sister Sophia, who quoted the peace, we call it the peace curve, and you missed the first part though. To start with the suffering. The suffering of Cambodia has been deep, and from this suffering, I think because he suffered himself a lot, from the history, other countries as a whole. So because of this suffering, some people, when they've gone through suffering, get worse, get into tough. But because of his studying of the Dhammas and his practice of Vipassana meditation, so some people will bounce back quickly. But you will see a lot of great people come up from places that they are suffering. Like Gandhi from the oppression of the British, Dr. King from the racial injustice and discrimination. So because these people suffer so much that they turn their suffering into something that can bring benefit not only to themselves but to people around them. So I think that the message has to be that one suffers. We all suffer. And I think Cambodia is one of the most resilient people in the world. It's gone through, the genocide, the killing, but like Maha, we keep, hope and smile and, like a healing. So the suffering, the great, the deep suffering have made him become so compassionate. That when you become compassionate, you have the loving kindness in yourself as well. So you will begin a peaceful process healing within yourself. So you will become a peaceful person. And like you said many times, that peace has to begin first from us. And we can do, to help. We can help very little if we ourselves suffer and not peaceful. But if we can train ourselves and overcome our sufferings and become peaceful, it's really great. Like helping others to free themselves as well. So yes, and then it starts to the communities, the family first, personal and families and communities and nations and world, and so that we all can live in peace and happiness. And I think the idea of one, so the Dharma truth, is not belong to any religion to me. It's too big to fit into one religion. So if you look back, that's why I like the idea of the Dalai Lama when someone trying to want to become a Buddhist monk, he would say, go back and study your own, like scriptures and teachings. Then it's not different. To be honest, it's not different. Go back. Even Gandhi himself, I will reply to Sister Tim about nonviolence when Mahatma Gandhi also and his working group went to India and to study. And, like during the Peace War, there's a lot of Gandhi students and Martin Luther King students that have organized and they will bring ideas to Maha. You know what? Like there's a lot of movements back in the past that have brought justice into people. And so we might learn something about Gandhi and Kings and others to work. And Maha said, you know what? Like thousands and 600 years ago in India, there's a monk who leads his followers, his nuns, because is to solve the conflict. And Horini, a very famous for him, is water conflict. So there's already have that. And even Gandhi is acknowledged that it didn't bring anything new to the world. Nonviolent love is all as hell. So it's really always in every basic teachings of a religion. So I think this is like why he'd like to hang out a lot and have a beautiful story of him get exposed to these different faiths and different religions. That was so open. He was so open and he respects and loves all this. So to me, I would, like to me, I took it as my life, work life as volunteer. So I'm very passionate and love talking about Maha and his life. And he in the Cambodian daily when it asked him, he want nonviolence to be taught in every school in Cambodia. So this topic is my passionate, and I love to talk about that. Yes, I want people to remember, him as someone who's very, very simple, very, very simple words. Even when I listened to his Dhamma, I said, too simple. So when we were young, too much ego. We just want to discuss big ideas and we don't have no idea what is that. But because of our curiosity, our eagerness, you want to, show that you're better than other people. So we like to talk about big ideas. And when you listen to Maha, it's really simple. If you're hungry, go to eat. If you're thirsty, go to drink. You always want to go far away, one step to reach to the horizon, but don't forget that you're here now. And when you get a bit older and you start to enjoy the beauties of simplicity, of this listen to, like see that the beauty of simplicity, then to understand. But when you were young and full of egos, and no, this money talk like so simple, so simple. So I think, yes, we have to go back to the very basics. That's why I always talk about why no one knows exactly what Saint Maha was born. And he never talked about his life, never talked about anything. And when he died, everybody go every corner of the world trying to get documentation about him. And why say it? And Bob told me that probably he thought it was not important. Why discussing about my date, my birthday, this had nothing to do with peace. That is really important. It's something that I get talk very little because he's only talked to the point. Like words of silence, I think, and especially in this world of social media that we can't live without our phone, I think keep in touch with your silence is very, very important. And like if we follow a lot of people, we want to know their stories, we get to know what's going on inside. And this is why we'll suffer, because we always look out what already in here. So you can't find it's always looking outside yourself. So I think you should, like Gandhi, once a week he will refuse to talk, no matter how big people come to meet him, how important you are. I will keep my day one day silent, complete silent. I will reply you in notes, but I'm not gonna talk. So I think this is very, very that we. I'm a little bit disappointed because as a Buddhist country, we have very little places that we can go and practice meditation. And I think meditation and vipassana is very core teachings of Buddhism. You can read a lot of big theories, but it comes down to practice. And without practice, it's just it's not going deep. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. You share a lot of great message and in very detail. And I just would like to wrap it as simplicity. I think simple is the base, simple living, but high thinking. So that's what we can see, we can find from Mahāghosananda. Silent is golden, actually. And you said he speak very simple, regardless of he got a PhD. And he always makes a joke, PhD means a person who has dukkha, right? So he used the simple language of the, of the farmers, people, peasant family, as he was. So thank you so much for your last message. And let me pass to Sister Jenny. What is your last message about, his way of life? How did you learn from him?
Yeah, my last message about him is that Mahāghosananda wasn't just a humanitarian and an environmentalist, but he was also a culture preserver of the Cambodian culture. If you read step by step, he talks about how some of our history is tied into who we are now as a people. So I just want to read one passage from him, and this is dedicated to the Khmer Americans and people who was born outside of Cambodia who are still trying to find who are we as Cambodian? What does it mean? What is the architecture of Angkor Wat means? Or like, why do we pray? Why do we, when we greet each other, why do we do this? Mahāghosananda actually tells it in this book, step by step. So this passage is called Four Faces, One Heart. During the Angkor period of our history, the ancient kings built elaborate temples. These stone temples reached to the skies and extended for miles, and so they were called temple mountains. One of the most famous is Angkor Thom. Parts of Angkor Thom still stand today. At Angkor Thom's main gate, there is a beautiful sculpture. It is a very large head with four faces of the Buddha, gazing out in four directions. The faces stand for great qualities of the Buddha: loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, and sympathetic joy. Why has this sculpture endured for so many centuries? Because it holds a promise, the nearly forgotten secret to peace in Cambodia: loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, and sympathetic joy. Four faces, one heart. Four factions, one Cambodia. Peace is coming slowly, step by step. So that's my last message.
Thank you so much, Sister Jenny, for sharing your last message. I would like to invite Dr. Yon Siyet to share your last message.
I have one picture of the walk in 1994. It was a third walk. Hopefully everybody can see it. This is the 600 monks walking into the ongoing battlefield, which is located in Battambang province. It is the place where we were walking. The spot was in Troisna. And this is about 1 hour before the killing started. And I was somewhere here. Couldn't see me. I was holding the Japanese peace banner. I walked in front of the group. And I think this is the landmines, thick forest lay in between Bovel and Troisna. It's about 8 kilometers. Before it was a thick forest, big forest. I think now it's no more. And what I'm trying to say is, the Cambodian monks have done a lot during the 90s under the leadership of Mahāghosananda to help the traumatized Cambodian people. So there are about 600 monks. Just walking into the ongoing battlefield is not a simple thing. It's not like a fairy tale, but this is a real, and it did happen in Cambodia under the leadership of Mahāghosananda. After 1 hour, this group had been attacked. The walker, the peace march had been attacked by the Khmer Rouge. And one monk was killed, and one nun, and a number of the walkers got injured. And luckily, I survived the attack. Yeah, luckily. But some did not. So this is a message. And I think if we continue to spread the teachings of Mahāghosananda, there will be more monks, more people will join this movement of love, movement of non-violence, movement of peace. And it is the social ingredients to keep the social stability alive. If the mind of the people are not peaceful, then I think we're gonna live in sufferings in generations to come. So this is a courage, and this is a great sacrifice led by Mahāghosananda and all the Cambodian monks and lay people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ante. Let me invite Venerable Visawajit to give his last message.
Thank you, Venerable. I just would like to focus on the point that Venerable Dr. Yon Siyet have mentioned about when the peace walk across the Battambang areas, there is a fight, and I think on the landmines, campaign, the main purpose of the peace walk, it could be on the cluster bomb, whatever. I just would like to raise a preaching of the Maha. He mentioned about the landmine that we have on the ground, because we have the landmine in heart, the greed, the hatred, and the delusions. He said that if we would like to oppose greed, we have to give the dana, generosity. Like his quotation is that we can oppose greed with the weapon of generosity. We can oppose hatred with the weapon of loving kindness. We can oppose delusion or ignorance with the weapons of wisdom. And other message that he always bring with him when he joined the peace prayer around the world. He said that the world is our house and all human beings are brothers and sisters. To love them, to help them, to serve them is our all duty and religions.
Thank you so much, Pante Visawajia. I would like to read the quotes as the last message as well before I hand it to Sister Josephine to wrap up the session today. So the quote of Mahāghosananda, I just gonna read a few. His motto is, peace is possible. The suffering of Cambodia has been deep. From this suffering comes great compassion. Great compassion makes a peaceful heart. Peaceful heart makes a peaceful person. A peaceful person makes a peaceful family. A peaceful family makes a peaceful community. A peaceful community makes a peaceful nation. And a peaceful nation makes a peaceful world. The cause of fighting and war is greed, anger, hatred, and ignorance. The cause of peace is morality, concentration, and wisdom. Also, truthfulness and gratitude. When we have truth, there is no more greed. When there is compassion, there is no more anger. When there is wisdom, there is no more ignorance. So there is no more fighting. We must keep morality. Hatred will kill you. There is no need for another enemy. Hatred will kill you. During his lifetime, the Buddha lobbied for peace and human rights. We can learn much from a lobbyist like him. Human rights begin when each man becomes a brother and each woman becomes a sister. When we honestly care for each other, then Cambodians will have Jews, and Jews will have Africans, and Africans will have others. We will all become servants for each other's rights, and any real peace will not favor east, west, north, or south. A peaceful Cambodia will be friendly to all. Peace is non-violent, and so we Cambodians will remain non-violent toward all as we rebuild our country. Peace is based on justice and freedom, and so a peaceful Cambodia will be just and free. Don't struggle with people, with men. Struggle with the goals and conditions that make men fight each other. If we cannot be happy despite our difficulties, what good is our spiritual practice? What can Buddhism do to heal the wounds of the world? What did the Buddha teach that we can use to heal and elevate the human condition? One of the Buddha's most courageous acts was to walk onto a battlefield to stop a conflict. He did not sit in his temple waiting for the oppressors to approach him. He walked right onto the battlefield to stop the conflict. We Buddhists must find the courage to leave our temples and enter the temples of contemporary human experience, temples filled with suffering. If we listen to the Buddha, Christ, or Gandhi, we can do nothing else. The refugee camps, the prisons, the ghettos, and the battlefields will then become our temples. We have so much work to do. I do not question that loving one's oppressors, Cambodian loving the Khmer, may be the most difficult attitude to achieve, but it is a way of the universe that retaliation, hatred, and revenge only continue to the cycle and never stop it. Reconciliation does not mean that we surrender rights and conditions. It means that we see ourselves in the opponent for what is the opponent, but a being in ignorance, and we ourselves are also ignorant of many things. Therefore, only loving kindness and right mindfulness can free us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pante, for reading out loud of a very great quote by Mahāghosananda. It's very inspiration of the day to recall his legacy. Thank you so much. And today it is my great pleasure to join with all Pante and sister, especially my sincere gratitude to Mahāghosananda, but also to our three speaker, Sister Sarom, but also Pante Soichie and Pante Yongsin, who have been part of the Dhamma Yatra, and a lot of work that you have continued to preserve Mahāghosananda legacy. Thank you. it's I don't know how, what word to say beside thank you, and we will. It is inspiring for us to continue the journey together on the pathway of the Buddha teaching. So our live show now come to the end, but before we end the live show, I like to share the merit from this Dhamma Sandana with all living being in the whole universe. May all be happy and peaceful. Once again, thank you so much to our honorable speaker for sharing with us today. Our gratitude to Mahāghosananda on his special occasion, the birthday of, on the May 23rd. And finally, I would like to express sincere thanks to the Dhammika Light Team, the founder, especially Pante Soktivi, who always inspiring us and supporting us and allowing us to be part of the team to bring the Dhamma to the whole universe, and especially to the technical team for providing such a wonderful support so that our program can be possible. Last but not least, thank you everyone for joining and following our live show as always. Now let us spend a few minutes practicing the Metta Bhavana, loving kindness meditation, which will be instructed by Pante Kassapa on camera. Thank you and goodbye. Our Metta meditation begins.
Hello everyone. Let us practice loving friendliness meditation for oneself. Self-loving friendliness meditation is the first section of Metta meditation. Self-loving friendliness meditation is designed to direct you to happily take care of yourself, to honestly forgive yourself, to truly accept yourself without conditions. Before starting, please find a very comfortable posture. Close your eyes. Relax your head, your shoulders, your arms, and your entire body. Please slowly take a very deep breath 3 times. When it is done, let your breath flow as naturally as it does. Observe your breath without judgment, reactions, and criticism. Just merely observe it as the way it is while you are listening to my Pali Metta chanting. Aham Pariya Please create a very tender smile on your face. Visualize your happy and smiling face. You are very happy person with smiling face. Please keep smiling with honest heart, because you are going to bless yourself. Please be aware of the phrases which I am going to recite, and let yourself honestly feel the real meanings of the phrases. May I be well and happy. May I be free from hatred. May I be free from ill will. May I be free from anger. May I be free from physical and mental sufferings. May I take care of myself happily. May I take care of myself happily. May I take care of myself happily. Now, take your right hand and place it on your chest, and you can mentally repeat after me. In this home, we are family. We live under the same shelter, so we must be kind to each other, be compassionate to each other, be friendly to each other, help each other, respect one another. Be happy every day. Keep smiling with honest heart. Be grateful. Be positive. Forgive even when it's really hard. Before open your eyes, please take again a very deep breath 3 times. Thank you. May you be well and happy.